Fabulous. Excellent. So tonight we're going to look at anchors, triggers, um, look a little bit about how the study of them came about, a little bit about what they do, where we find them, or actually it'd be quicker to cover where we don't find them, and to look at a couple of techniques you can use in relation to anchors, which we'll get to. But first of all, I'm going to start talking, tell a little bit of a story about Akira Cameron, politician who looked awesome, all dressed up in a suit, and had been so inspired when she was watching Bonnie Kallick, who was a one-time world famous spiritual teacher, ex-personal fitness trainer, and now TV personality, present her primetime show, that she quit her job, her life in politics, in order to live her life's dream. And she headed down to London to win, well, not to win, but to train as a water slide tester. It is such a thing. It's a job. You can Google it. Where after training on the first day on the job, a freak accident meant that someone had not put the water in the pool, catapulting her into the air. And upon landing, there was no splash, merely the sound of a spine cracking on concrete. As she lay on the floor of the drought like swimming pool, in agony, contemplating the insurance claim, a being appeared. Maybe it was an angel, or maybe it was a hypnotist, I don't know, appeared through the stars that were spinning around her head, and he passed his hands over the brakes and, speaking to that part of her that was, is, and will always be whole, he said, if you choose it, you can heal those wounds of yours. So what are anchors? Where does it start? We'll start with a man and his dog. So Dewey, you might be interested in this bit yourself. For one man and his dog, or dogs. The man in question was Ivan Pavlov, and in the early 1900s, he was experimenting with unconditioned responses using dogs. He measured the amount of saliva produced when a dog was presented with a bowl of food, which must have been kind of interesting, I guess, for him at the time. He discovered that the dogs would also salivate when they saw the lab assistants. So in a very short period of time, they'd gone from just salivating when the food came down to associating the lab assistants with the food. So if they saw the assistant that gave the food, they'd also react in the same way and start salivating. He discovered that dogs salivate not just when they saw the assistants, but in a short time he changed it and introduced a bell. So when he rang the bell and then presented the food, the dogs within a very short period of time again learnt to be able to associate the bell with food appearing, and so would equally salivate when they heard that. I almost wish I had a bell to ring for you. Would also then salivate when they heard the bell, having learnt, because it wasn't a dissociated behavior, it was a learned behavior, a learned association of the bell with the food. And the idea that food was about to be served became anchored to the sound of the bell. If we think of an anchor, it's like a trigger, it's like a switch. It evokes a certain response within you. It can be connected to any of the five senses, to thoughts, to emotions. And anchors exist within language, within touch, within the things we see, within sounds, within the smells. Classic one with smells is the smell, the smell of a Christmas tree. And for some people, they smell a Christmas tree and they get all those warm, wonderful memories of being a kid and being all excited as a kid, and all the things associated. The smell of that Christmas tree is the anchor, the switch that switches on those memories, those responses. And anchors exist within language. In fact, without anchors, language would not work. The most common is within words. And so if I was to say winter, as we're heading in that direction, if I was to say winter, we all have things that come to mind. Some of us will think of snow and frost. Some of us will think of maybe warm fires. Some of us will think of Christmas. Some of us will think about maybe times when we were playing as kids. Some of us will maybe even shiver a little, because every time we think of winter, it just makes us feel cold. So therefore we shiver. And that word is anchored and becomes the trigger and switch for all those associations, all those things that we know to be winter. If we didn't have that, then every time you discovered the word cat, it would have no, you, if you said the word cat, you wouldn't know what someone was talking about, because there wouldn't be the anchor with that word. There wouldn't be the association. Whereas when we say cat, all the things we think about when we say cat and see cats and feel cats and touch cats can all come to mind. So we learn our language through creating verbal anchors, associations with those words. And we can try another thing. If I said to you to think of a lemon, and we can go through the different senses here. Just think about what a lemon looks like, kind of shape of it, the color, obviously, usually a yellow. And as you're thinking about a lemon, that yellowness, think about the smell. If you hold the uncut lemon close to your nose, that slight citrusy, kind of cleansing kind of smell, I would call it. I don't know what you call it. So think about that. And then, in fact, think about cutting into the lemon. That first little spray of juice that comes out when you get that really nice lemony smell coming out of the lemon. And then imagine you've just cut yourself a slice and you're bringing that lemon up to your lips. And the way sometimes the citrus, the acid in it can kind of sting or burn the lip a little bit. And that first bite of that lemon, that kind of bittersweet, you get the smell of it, the taste of it. And as you're thinking about that, all your associations, for most people, will trigger a certain amount of lipping and the release of saliva, because those associations, whether it's the images, the words, whatever, are connected to certain responses. So anchors connect those responses to the words, to the images, to the actions, to the thoughts, because our inner dialogue can also be an anchor. It can be a trigger. And this exercise with the lemon not only illustrates that the power of our mind over our body, because by thinking of something that isn't really happening, we're creating the conditions as if it was, which is a lesson in itself. But it teaches us now to realize that we can also cause those changes. Anchors occur unconsciously. However, they can also be deliberately built, as we've discovered through the meditation group. You can build an anchor, but you can also collapse. You can dissolve, whatever you want to call it, an anchor. Remembering that there's nothing that cannot be an anchor. It can be a room. Certain rooms you go into, it just makes you feel bad. You don't know why. That's because there's some characteristic of that room, something about that room that in your past has become associated with not feeling comfortable. So you go into a room, I don't like this room, don't know why. Because that room has triggered an unconscious anchor that connects you with that feeling. And we learn them. And like I said, we can build anchors and we can dissolve anchors. Another way to define an anchor is simply that an anchor is a stimulus that changes your state of mind. It's an action, it's a deed, it's a word, it's a scent, it's something you've seen that shifts your state of mind. And our states of mind, as we know, change all the time. So why not take control of it? To start with, the first thing to do, if you're looking at the anchors and triggers in your life, is to be curious about the ones that are already there. Start by looking for those things, those anchors that make you feel good, make you feel positive, give you a lift, give you a boost. The anchors, the things that in your life that when you see them, do them, taste them, smell them, tell yourself that thing, make you feel good, make you feel happy about life. Because once you become aware of what those triggers are, you can trigger them consciously. So as an example, say that whenever you're really, really ridiculously excited about something, like really like the energy's buzzing, you're fizzing for it, you're really excited, say physically you notice that you touch your tongue to the back of your teeth and smile a bit like that and shrug your shoulders. I mean, that looked really ridiculous, but say you do that when you're really excited, you just go like that without thinking about it, you just do it, and it almost amplifies that feeling. That as an anchor, as something you do that is associated with that, you can then use. So if you've got a job that you need to get done, maybe there's a bit of housework and you just need that extra boost of something to get it done, that bit of motivation. If you recreate that anchor, that associated physical gesture, that, and start thinking about doing the job you've got to get done, that action creating the excitement and the association of that action with feeling excited and full of energy will cancel out the kind of maybe reluctance to the motivation to not do something and help you get that job done. So it can be used by becoming aware of our natural anchors. If there's a certain smell that just takes you back to a wonderful point in your life that you just felt good, and every time you think about that time, you relax, you feel happy, you feel contented, the worries drop away a bit. If you know what that smell is, if you can recreate it, if you can buy it as an oil, or maybe it's just the smell of something baking, create it. So if you're feeling a bit down, if you're feeling a bit stressed, you can use that smell, that scent, as the anchor to trigger the memory, to change the state, to change how you're feeling. But also likewise, keep an eye out for the negative anchors, those things that make you feel bad. Remember, an anchor can be anything. It can be the way someone speaks to you. It can be the way a room looks. If you go into a room and in your house and it's not feeling comfortable, move things around a bit, change something, because it could be that something in a certain place is reminding you of something that happened way back. You're not consciously, but unconsciously, your mind goes, oh, that time when I got shouted at as a kid, there was a vase in exactly that place. And every time you see a vase in that place on a shelf just below the window, it's unconsciously reminding you. So that always makes you feel a little bit like something bad's about to happen. So look for the negative anchors, the triggers that make you feel sad, angry, certain ways people behave, certain things people do, anything. Those triggers that are there that then make you feel, or you've learned to feel, should I say, when you see those triggers, experience those triggers in whatever form. And when you're aware of them, that's when you can start to change them. That's when you can start to do something about it. So you can do that very simply just by avoiding whatever that negative trigger is. If you realize all of a sudden that a certain way of telling yourself something always makes you feel like you're not good enough, avoid it. Stop telling yourself that. Change the sound of the voice in your head. Alter the trigger. It's your head, it's your mind. You can change these things. Get rid of them. You might think you like having flowers in the house, but on a subconscious level, you might find that after a day of having flowers in the house, you maybe start feeling sad. You won't be consciously aware of that process, but you'll put the flowers out, you really, oh, they're nice, they brighten up the place. The next day you wake up feeling sad. It could be those flowers put down on a table connect you with some sad memory, some sad feeling. So anchors are everywhere. But if we're aware of them, we can utilize and use the positive ones, those ones that we've already got that make us feel good. If when you if maybe you won something or you've achieved something and you made a gesture or you did something like, oh, I can't believe it, that I can't believe it can be an anchor and a trigger for recreating that state of mind, recreating that feeling. You see, anchors are a means to an end. When we know or have created anchors to elicit our most beneficial states of mind, we become, if you think of the tarot card, the magician, and the magician stands there, and on the table in front are the representations of the different elements. And it's meant to show that the path of the magician is the mastery over the elements, over some people say the material world, but actually it's that inner mastery. And when we start looking at our anchors, the things that trigger our positive moods, our positive states of mind, and those things that trigger our negative states of mind, we start to become a little bit like the magician in that card. Because we're looking, if you take the elements earth, air, fire, and water as representing different aspects of mind, body, emotions, we become the master. We become in control of our inner world. We take control of the states of mind, and we're always shifting between a state of mind, from this mind to that mind. If you were doing something before you came to sit here, and then you've stopped, become still, and you're watching, you've shifted a state. You're no longer in the doing state of mind. You're in the sitting and listening state of mind. So by learning about anchors, learning to notice our personal anchors, and learning how to create useful, productive anchors and get rid of the ones that we don't like, we're taking control of our inner world, our inner experiencing, and it allows us to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. Anchors can be established in moments. It can be as quick as that, or they can be from a repetitive build up. So if, say, somebody as a child was, no matter how good they'd been, had a parent figure that when they came down for tea every evening would get on their case. And because they always had, I'm going to say sausages because that's what I had for tea last night, because they always had sausages almost every night, the smell of sausages become a negative anchor. They associate it with just being told off all the time. Not the biggest of problems, but at the same time, if you know that and you know how to deal with anchors and collapse anchors and build anchors, you can get rid of those things. And in getting rid of those negative anchors that trigger the bad feelings, you can become more happy within everyday life. For those of you who've done the self-hypnosis course, there's already a whole load of stuff within that which you can use in and around anchors. The self-hypnosis stuff is really good. I think we did anchors. I don't think we did collapsing and building, but if you can take yourself into a light hypnotic state and work with the techniques we're going to look at in a moment, you'll get really, really quick results. So with self-hypnosis, it's a really good tool, but you don't need to use self-hypnosis to actually change anchors and the different responses. A habit is a form of anchor. Certain situations, certain moments, certain people trigger a response, and we have a learned behavior that we repeat. But in knowing how to work with our anchors, we can then develop really good habits and dispel the bad habits by building up and collapsing different anchors. Because anchors can set us free, or they can keep us stuck. In India, I don't know if it's still the case, but it used to be that an elephant would be tamed from a very young age by being tethered by one leg to a stake. And every time it tried to get away, it wouldn't have the strength to pull the stake, so it would go and it would become stuck, and the tether would hold it back, till eventually it gave up. Eventually it would give up, it would stop trying, it knew the boundary of where it could go, so it wouldn't bother going beyond it. However, the elephant grows up, but then later on in life, because as a child, as a baby elephant, it learned how to, that it could only go so far. Even though it's now got the strength to just walk away and pull that tether out of the ground, they won't, because that tether and that stake have become an anchor for them. So anchors can hold us stuck. They can also allow us to to go beyond anywhere that we imagined. So over the next week, next few weeks, next month, start to look for and become aware of your anchors, the good and the bad. Look for those thoughts that sometimes you have just before feeling bad about something, because those thoughts, you might realize, actually, I think that every time I feel this. There's a good chance then that that thought is the anchor for the feeling. And if you change the thought, or stop yourself going through that thought the moment you notice it, suddenly you're taking control, because if you stop that thought, you're then not going to provoke the feeling. People, look at people that make you feel good, people make you feel bad. We can all sit here and think of somebody that when we think about them, it just makes us smile. It'd be like, oh, it'd be so good to see them right now. And we can all think of somebody that makes us not feel so good. Those people, the thoughts about those people, are the anchors to the emotion. They create that feeling. The image of that person in our head creates that feeling, whether it's a good feeling or a bad feeling. An anchor of mine is mothballs. That's an interesting one. That's really interesting. Oh yeah, I'll ask you about that when we get to the end. Actually, only if you want to say. But that's intriguing. Um, but what? Yeah, completely. So start to become aware of them, good and bad. Maybe, as I was about to say, literally as Lisa's done it, share it in the group over the week if you're comfortable with doing that. If it's, if it's something you kind of go, it doesn't have to be deep and powerful and meaning. It could just be something light-hearted, something, or a positive anchor that you discover, that every time you do this, it reminds you of something that then makes you feel really good. Just, yeah, see what you can come up with, share them in the group. Because the more aware you are of how anchors and triggers work within your life, the more control you have over how you feel and your state of mind. So how now do we consciously create an anchor? For an anchor to be effective, it needs a few specific things. It needs to be unique and specific. It needs to basically be the same trigger, the same switch every time. So if you think about just literally coming into the house, if you always switch the switch on in the living room, the light will come on in the living room. But if one day you go and switch the light on in the kitchen expecting the light to come on in the living room, it's not going to happen. And it's the same with anchors on a very simple level. Whatever you choose to be the trigger, the anchor, the switch that generates that state of mind needs to be the same thing. So when we, with the I meditate, where we do the pinch and the relax, that works because over a period of time, we're doing the same gesture with the same ideas and the same feelings. So it becomes associated with the action, and therefore the action can then start triggering that state of mind. However, if every week we did something different, so if every week it was more like Simon Says, and it was more like, this week I want you to relax by touching your elbow and saying relax. This week I want you to touch your nose, but it wouldn't work. It would not be effective. So when you're choosing to work with anchors consciously to create a positive state of mind that you can trigger when you need it. If you need confidence, you can anchor confidence into a gesture. So when you're in an interview or when you're at a job, or you need that extra boost of confidence, you can do it. If you need to anchor patience, maybe you're going to be dealing with some people that just try your patience, you can think of times that you have been patient, where it's been the easiest thing, and allow those feelings to build and anchor that feeling. And then when you're having to deal with those difficult people, you can trigger that anchor, and then you can feel more patient with them and not have to kind of get so irate with them. So first thing it needs, like I say, is an anchor. When you're consciously creating it, needs to be the same gesture each time. So, and that's not just a physical gesture. It could be a word, in which case, when you repeat the word, it's no use using, say, the word calm for relaxation, and one week going calm, calm, and the following week going calm, because it's not going to work. You need to use the same tone or the same action or the same color, whatever you're anchoring it with, every time. When you come to anchoring it, and this will make more sense, in the process, we need to do it as the desired response. So say, I'm just going to go happiness. Say you just want to have an anchor to feel more happiness in certain situations. So you connect with, you allow those feelings of happiness to build, times when you felt it, and it builds and it builds. And there's a technique to getting it intensified so it feels really good. And before it peaks, before it hits that zenith, that's when we anchor it. We do it whilst that feeling is intensifying and increasing, because if you do it on the down, you're going to be anchoring the losing of that feeling. So when you trigger it, if you've done it the wrong way around, you're going to squeeze those finger and thumbs for happiness or whatever you do, and you're just going to find that you start feeling less happy and not quite knowing why. So we have to capture that anchor on the peak time as that feeling is on the build and on the rise. It's a really quick process as well. The other thing is, an anchor needs to be practiced. Very simple, use it or lose it. So even if it's something you're not needing to use, to trigger your anchors, to practice them, again, doesn't take long, every day. And let's face it, if they're positive ones, it doesn't matter anyway. If you're out and you're having a good time, trigger the anchor to feel even better. You know, if you're out and you're feeling good and confident, trigger your anchor confidence anyway. One, it's going to boost the confidence you are feeling. Two, it's going to associate that gesture with feeling even more confident, and it builds on it. So like anything, practice it even if you're not needing to use it there and then. Other things we can do is, which is quite fun when you do it, is you can attach several states of mind, several states of mind with one gesture. So, for instance, I'm going to go with relaxation and feeling good type anchor. You can anchor, say we do, I don't know, a squeeze of the fist. A squeeze of the fist is the anchor for feeling really deep relaxation. But actually, that's okay because physically you can feel it, but you'd also like to feel clarity. So you think of times when you have clarity and you anchor the feeling of clarity into the same gesture. And you think, actually, I'd like those times to be creative, and you think about the times when you've been creative and you anchor that state of mind to the same. So suddenly with one gesture you've almost got like a super state generator. So not only whenever you do that, you don't just feel relaxed, you feel relaxed, you have clarity in your mind, and your creativeness, your inspiration starts flowing as well. So in one gesture we can anchor many desired states to help create the us that we want to be in that moment. Or you can link them. I mean, we're not going to go into all these techniques, but once you know the basic ones that we're going to cover, you can pretty well work it out for yourself. But we can always do another thing, or you can message me and say, could you go through this? So you can anchor many states, useful states, to a single gesture. So when you do that thing, it just triggers that super resourceful state of mind. You can link, you can kind of like chain link anchors. So rather than linking everything to one gesture, you have your one gesture, which I'm going to say is just tweaking your ear like that, that then makes you feel relaxed. But then you can have the act of feeling relaxed as the next anchor for feeling positive. And when you start feeling positive, that can be the anchor that leads to you being more creative. When you feel yourself being more creative and those ideas flowing, that's the state that leads you to confidence. So you can chain link them. So rather than firing them all at once, you can stack them up in a row, and one leads to the next, to the next, to the next. And you can collapse anchors, neutralizing the effects. So if there's a state of mind that you don't like, say you always feel a bit anxious when you first go out, and it doesn't ruin the night, but it kind of takes the edge off going out for you. Well, using anchoring techniques, you can collapse that negative feeling, replacing it with a more useful state of mind. So rather than every time you go out feeling that bit of anxiety, you go out, you get to the doors of the club or wherever you're going, and you trigger your anchor. And then rather than opening the door and feeling anxious, you open the door and you either feel neutral, which is better than feeling anxious, or you trigger the anchor and you actually feel excited about the fact you're there. So these can be used, and the beauty of it is, they're subtle, they're not obvious techniques, and if you're doing them and practicing them, you get to the point, and I know I've said this in the other groups, you get to the point where if it's something you practice regularly, it becomes to the point where just the thought of making the action, so the thought of clenching the fist, tugging the ear, actually will trigger the response anyway. So the thought has then become the actual anchor itself. So we're going to go through. Oh, Sally's just reappeared. There we go. Wait for Sally to just arrive again, and then we'll. There you go. Fabulous, fabulous. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you through the steps for creating a positive, what sometimes might be called a resource state, a feeling that you would like to have, a feeling that would benefit you if you could just trigger it whenever you want. Because with anchoring, you can. So the first step of this is to decide on the feeling, decide on that state of mind that you would like. Could just be a general happiness, a sense of peace, motivation, whatever it is. And then once you've got that state of mind, emotion, just give me a little wave at the camera and I'll know that we're at that all at the same place. Like I say, just something simple for now, so it could just be more happiness or something like that. So the first thing now, once you've decided on that, is I want you to think of a time where you experienced quite a high level of that emotion. It might be that you never have, in which case you can think of having seen other people in that state that you want, and then imagine yourself in that person's body. Imagine how that would feel. And because your mind's imagining it, it will start to generate that for you. So think of a time when you've experienced quite an intense moment of whatever that feeling is. If you've all got that memory, if you've all got that thing, just give me a quick signal so I know where we're at. Yeah. Good, wonderful, fabulous. So now what you do, and you can close your eyes for this, and this is something you can do yourself. You don't need guiding through this. Once you've got the steps, you can do this for yourself. So just close your eyes a moment, and I really want you to go into that memory, into that experience. Or if it's not a memory and you're picturing somebody else having that experience that you want to feel. Ooh. It won't stop. Could you hear that nice music? I thought my alarm was off and it wasn't. There we go. Ghostbusters. Who knows? So where were we? Yes, it might be a time of amusement that comes to mind. And you just want to feel more amused by life. So whatever it is, close your eyes again and go into the memory. Go into the memory, go into that experience. See the things that you saw. Hear the things you heard. Allow the feelings of that moment. If you were there with people, hear what they were saying, see what they were doing. Just really bring it alive. See the things you saw, hear the things you're hearing. Know and feel those things you were knowing and feeling, and start to notice that feeling. And as you start to notice that feeling, as you step back into that memory, I want you to start intensifying it. I want you to notice how it moves, how that feeling moves within your body. And I want you to spin it. Allow it to move, whatever way it's moving, however it feels within you, allow it to spin within you, allow it to get faster within you. Really build that up. Really, if you're remembering sounds, then let that sound get louder. If you're remembering the image of it, allow the image of it to get bigger, brighter, and stronger. Really amplify everything about that memory as that feeling ramps up and ramps up and ramps up. And then we stop. And just open your eyes a moment. Fabulous. And we're going to do that again, but I want you to now, just before we start again, to come up with a gesture, something you're going to do to anchor that feeling. So it could just be as simple as putting your thumb against your little finger. It could be that you're going to just squeeze your hand gently. So once you've got that anchor, the thing you're going to anchor it to, just give me that signal again. Wonderful, fabulous. And now what I want you to do is close your eyes again and start getting back into that memory. You've already started recreating it once, so it'll be easier this time to get it more intense. And as you're getting it more intense, see the things you see or hear the things you hear. Step into that memory, make it big. Make it large, hear it, amplify the sounds. If things smelt good, then make them smell amazing. If things were brightly colored, make them radiantly colored. Even more so, amplifying it, and become aware of where you're feeling that within you and how that feeling moves within you, and start to spin that feeling much faster, allowing it to get bigger and brighter, stronger and faster. Really move it, really allow it. And as it's building, 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 just before it peaks, fire that anchor, make that gesture and connect it with that feeling. Doing that, and then stop, open your eyes, fidget around. That's right. And that bit's important. We have to break that state of mind. Now what I want you to do is just sitting there, whatever that gesture was you did to connect to that feeling, repeat it and just notice where those feelings are. That basic process, sometimes just the once running it through will connect the two. However, sometimes if it's not quite there, if it's not quite connected to it, you may need to repeat that process a couple of 3 times to just build that association. And in that first part of the process, the more you can intensify that feeling, the more you can connect with those feelings and allow them to build as you relive the memory, relive that feeling, and anchor it with the same gesture each time, the stronger it will be. And then once you've got it, once you can sit there and squeeze that hand or pinch the finger or whatever that gesture was, and sit there without going through the whole process and just make the gesture and start to feel those feelings, you have taken control of making that state shift. You have taken control. You have created the anchor that makes you feel that way. And then to keep it alive, to keep it going, practice it. Practice it. You know, if it's you want to feel more blissful, there's nothing wrong with sitting down at the end of the day and just watching your favorite program and just triggering those feelings of bliss, just to keep accessing and re-accessing. Because the more you affirm it, it becomes like our language. You know, if I say sunrise, we all have associations, feelings, and thoughts that come up when I say sunrise. You don't have to consciously do anything for that now; it's automatic. And what you're after is practicing to the point where that trigger, that anchor, creates that feeling automatically. Like I said, where you almost just only thinking about it allows you to feel that way. So that's creating an anchor. And it's one of those things you're just going to practice and work at. The other technique we can use is to collapse an anchor. We've already got the first part of it, which is creating the positive state that you wish to have. So I'll talk you through this one first. We create the anchor for the positive state. So we do the process that we've done, and I'm going to use this as a gesture just to illustrate it. So by doing this with my right hand, we create a sense of, I'm going to say, deep calm. Deep calm. The next stage is we create an anchor in the same way to the feeling that we don't want. And I'm going to say maybe because of COVID's around, a lot of people are finding work is a lot more stressful. So we anchor that feeling, we go through that same process we just did, but with that feeling of stress, allowing it to spin. And again, just before it peaks, we anchor it to this gesture. So once we've done that, when we pinch our thumb and right finger together like this, we feel calm, relaxed, feel good. We pinch this one and it triggers that sense of the stress and that feeling of the stress. Once you've got those two anchored, you then do is you pinch the two together. And what will happen if you've got this right is for a moment or so, you'll get a slight sense of confusion. And what's happening is both anchors are firing at the same time, and your mind doesn't know whether it goes to the nice blissed out feeling calm and relaxed state or whether it goes to the stressful state. The positive state will cancel out the negative state. So you fire them both together, you make the two gestures together, triggering your mind going, do I go happy, do I go sad, or whatever the feelings are. You usually get a sense of kind of a slight sense of what's going on, how am I meant to feel right now, kind of thing going on. Hold those anchors until that sense of confusion stops. And then what you do is you slowly release the negative one. And then you slowly release the positive one. You always slowly release the negative one first. Release the negative one, because the mind will stay with the last feeling it has in association to that anchor. And then once you've done that, you test it. Try to trigger the unwanted response. So you can either do it this way by squeezing the negative anchor, and you'll either find that it's less or that you feel a bit indifferent about it, or you might even find that now when you do this, it gives you the same response as the positive. But by collapsing that anchor and the associations with it, when we step into that situation back at work where it feels stressful because of COVID, because we've collapsed that anchor, when we go there, we don't then experience that stress. We don't experience that feeling. And we can also then trigger a more positive feeling about how we want to be because we've anchored that. Would you like to go through that as an exercise, or I'm going to type the two sets, the building anchor and collapsing anchor up, and post it in the group so it'll be there to read through and practice at your own time. Would you like to go through the process of collapsing, actually doing it? In which case, give me a wave. Yeah. Okay, fabulous. So I want you to think of a state of mind, a feeling, a situation that you want to change how you feel, how you react to that situation. Again, we don't, we're just learning this at the moment, so don't necessarily wade in there with the biggest, most deepest thing, but something where you go, do you know what? If I could just feel a little bit more calm in that situation, if I feel a little bit more whatever in that situation. Yeah, has everyone got one? Wonderful, thank you. And first of all, decide on what the physical gesture is that you're going to do. And whatever it is that you're going to do with the right hand, you're going to do with the left hand, or it might not be that. You might choose to press your right leg to the floor and press your left leg more to the floor. It doesn't have to be the hands. They're just the most easiest and obvious. So if everyone's got that, so think about the situation, that response that you want to change, that state of mind you want to change. Think about what you'd rather feel instead, which I'm just going to call the positive state and the negative state, because obviously I don't know what your individual choices are. If we all got that, yep, wonderful, fabulous. So first of all, let's build and anchor the positive state. So same process as before. Start to remember a time when you experienced that positive emotion, that positive state. A time when you experienced it quite intensely. And once you've got that, step into that. Close your eyes if it helps and remember it. Step into it. Recreate that experience. See the things that you saw. Feel the things that you felt. Know and understand everything that made that such a good and positive experience. Really step into that. Really recreate it. And start to become aware of where you feel that and how that emotion feels within you, how that feeling is within you, and start to intensify it. If there are any images coming to mind that are connected to that feeling, make them big, make them bright. If there's any sounds, make them louder. If there's any smells, amplify anything about it that intensifies that feeling, allowing that feeling to build now more and more within you, building louder, building brighter, building stronger. And as that starts to build, getting faster and faster, spin that feeling within you. And as it starts to peak, anchor that feeling now, and then release it. Open your eyes and have a fidget. And what I want to do is just test it. Just allow yourself a moment, just whatever the anchor was, fire that anchor and notice that feeling coming up. Just be aware of that feeling. And now we're going to do the same. I'm only going to go through it once. Obviously, if you were practicing this yourself, if you squeeze that or do whatever the gesture is, and you only get a little bit of that feeling, then you can repeat it a number of times to build the strength up. But we'll do it now with the negative. So I want you to think of the negative state, the negative emotion, that feeling that you just don't want that reaction, you don't want that feeling. And again, go into that. Allow yourself to go into that memory. Allow yourself to experience that state of mind, that feeling, that emotion. And be aware of where you experience that. How you experience it, how it moves within you. And start spinning it and intensifying it. Intensifying it, making it stronger, building it, spinning it, changing the images, making them bigger, brighter, stronger, any sounds, amplifying them, really building that feeling. And as it builds, it builds, it builds, just anchor it again with the opposite hand making that gesture. And then once you've done that, fidget, shift, open your eyes again. That's it. And now what I want you to do is whatever the gesture was, whatever you did with the right hand and then you did with your left, take a nice deep breath in. As you breathe out, just do the gesture at the same time with both hands or both actions, whatever it was. There should be a moment of uncertainty, maybe a little bit of confusion, and just hold those two anchors whilst you experience that. Allow yourself to go through that. And then slowly just lift off the negative anchor. Once that feeling of confusion settles, you've gone through it, just release that negative anchor, holding on to the positive one. And then you can release the right hand or the opposite hand, release the positive one. And then I want you to just try to reconnect with that old negative feeling. Fire that anchor again. Try to find it, try to feel it. and then just have a shake, a fidget. And like I say, for tonight's purposes, I've just walked us through the techniques. But the more you practice with these, the more you get into it, the more it works for you, the more it will fire off for you, the more you'll, and it's an interesting space when that collapse happens. There is this moment of kind of confusion that follows. Learning to work with our anchors, learning to master our anchors, create states, collapse states, gives us a great tool for maintaining our mental health, our mental wellness, to help us deal with emotions, to help us deal with difficult situations. It gives us a tool to help us be the best us that we can be, to shape and shift our lives, being more in control of our inner world, because it is our inner world. We are not taught how to be in control of it, but we can be. So we can use it, for, like say, for our mental wellness and dealing with our emotional hurt. If you choose it, you can heal those wounds of yours. And in that moment, Akira Cameron instantly saw through the illusory nature of the physical existence and started to laugh out loud. And to the amazement of the paramedic who'd come to join her at the swimming baths, she stood up. And as she did, however, her local mind, that little Akira Cameron, said inside her head, "Look at me. I've cracked my spine. And just because some random being tells me I can heal myself, I'm up and I'm walking about." How fantastic. At which point she collapsed in a very painful heap on the floor and screamed. Her spine did in fact heal, much to the wonderment of the cynical doctors, and she returned to water slide testing. So good at it that she got headhunted, got to test some of the biggest water slides in the world, over in America, where she met her true love, married, and became a politician in America instead. And that's just the end of that little story there as well. So I'm going to stop recording